In the orbital training ring of the Galactic Defense Academy, silence hung thick between the clang of practice blades and the hum of repulsor fields. The ring floated far above the blue swirl of Terra Nova, tethered to the Academy by a slender spine of alloy and light. Inside, cadets from over 100 species trained under rigid doctrine. Each movement measured, each strike approved by protocol. They came from worlds of fire, ice, gas, and stone, but none stood out like Lila Voss. Lila was the only elf woman in the entire alliance. Her kind had long faded from the front lines, remembered more for their ancient songs and star maps than for combat. Most believed elves were too delicate, too quiet, too slow to survive modern war. Their bones were light, their reflexes graceful but not brutal, their minds tuned to harmony rather than destruction. Instructors whispered that she'd been admitted as a political gesture, a nod to a dying race, not because she belonged. But Lila never spoke to defend herself. She simply showed up. Every dawn cycle, she arrived before the lights brightened, barefoot on the cold alloy floor, her silver hair tied back with a cord of woven moonvine. She wore no armor, only a dark training suit that clung to her frame like shadow, and she watched. Always watched. Today was different. Today was live demonstration day. Commander Drelk, a hulking Kenthar with 4 arms and a voice like grinding stone, stood at the center of the ring. His species had dominated close-quarters doctrine for 3 centuries. He gestured to 2 energy blades mounted on the wall, gleaming, unstable, and forbidden for dual use. No species can dual-wield these, he boomed, his mandibles clicking with certainty. The feedback loop will fry your nervous system before you complete a single crosscut. Even our best engineers tried, failed, died. It's not a challenge. It's physics, the cadets murmured. Some nodded. Others glanced at the blades with hungry eyes, quickly looking away. One young Varelian dared to ask, what if someone synced their biorhythm to the emitters? Then they'd sync their death, Drelk snapped. The blades resonate at opposing frequencies. Holding one is hard enough. 2 is suicide. Lila stepped forward. No one saw her move. One moment she was at the edge of the ring. The next she stood before the weapon rack. The room stilled. Even the air recyclers seemed to pause. Drelk narrowed his eyes. Cadet Voss. Return to your station, she didn't answer. Instead, she reached up and took the first blade. It ignited with a sharp hiss, blue-white light casting long shadows across her face. Then she took the second. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few cadets backed away instinctively. Drelk's lower arms twitched toward his sidearm, but Academy rules forbade weapons in the ring. Put them down, he growled. That's a direct order. Lila turned slowly. Her eyes, pale green like forest mist at dawn, met his without fear. She didn't raise the blades, didn't adopt a stance. She simply held them at her sides, humming softly in her palms. Then she tilted her head just slightly and said, Define can't. The words were quiet, but they cut through the ring like a blade through silk. Drelk blinked. No one had ever questioned a doctrine so plainly, especially not an elf, especially not a cadet. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the blades began to pulse. Not erratically, but in rhythm, matching the beat of her heart. The feedback that should have torn through her nerves instead flowed like water through stone. The hum deepened, harmonized. The light from the blades softened, shifting from harsh blue to a warm silver. Drelk staggered back a step. That's impossible. Lila took one step forward, then another. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if walking through a dream. She raised both blades, crossed them before her chest and bowed, just as elven warriors had done in the old wars, centuries before the Alliance existed. When she straightened, the blades remained steady. No tremor, no overload, no collapse. The cadets were frozen. Some recorded with wrist comms. Others simply stared, mouths open. One whispered, She's syncing them with her biology. Another replied, Elves don't have that kind of neural output. But Lila wasn't just syncing. She was rewriting the rules. Her people had once shaped stars with song and bent time with silence. War had changed, but they hadn't forgotten. They'd only been waiting. Drelk finally found his voice. You've tampered with Academy equipment. That's a court-martial offense. I touched nothing, Lila said. The blades are standard issue. The problem was never the weapons. It was the wielder. Murmurs turned to shouts. A few cadets cheered. Others looked afraid. Drelk's face darkened. You think you're special because you're the last of your kind? You think that gives you the right to break protocol? "I don't think I'm special," Lila said. "I just know what's possible." She deactivated the blades. The ring plunged into near darkness, lit only by the ambient glow of the academy beyond the viewport. She placed the weapons back on the rack, perfectly aligned as if returning borrowed tools. Then she walked away, bare feet silent on the metal floor. But the moment had passed. Nothing would be the same. By the end of the cycle, the footage had spread across every training deck, every mess hall, every private comm channel in the academy. Some called her a prodigy. Others called her a threat. The High Council convened in secret. The instructors argued. The cadets debated late into the night. Lila returned to her quarters, a small pod near the academy's outer rim. There, curled on the floor beside her bunk, lay Kale. He was no larger than a hunting hound, but his scales shimmered with the deep black of void space. His eyes glowed faintly amber, and his wings, folded tight against his body, hummed with stored energy. He was her dragon, not a pet, not a weapon, but a bond older than the Alliance itself. Kale lifted his head as she entered. He didn't speak, he never did, but his gaze said everything. "You showed them." "Not yet," Lila whispered, stroking the ridge above his eyes. "Just reminded them that rules are made by those who fear change." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere beyond the known systems, something stirred. Something ancient, something hungry. The Alliance ignored it, trusting in their fleets and their doctrines, but Lila had seen it in her dreams. The swarm, the silence, the endless hunger of the hive mind known only as gear. She knew the real test wasn't in the ring. It was coming, and when it did, the galaxy would need more than rules. It would need someone who dared to ask, "Define can't." For now, though, she sat beside her dragon, watching the stars, waiting. The academy would decide her fate soon. Exile, imprisonment, promotion. It didn't matter. She had already chosen her path, and it began with 2 swords. Lila's exile began before the sun cycle ended. The High Council did not announce it with fanfare or ceremony. They simply locked her access codes, sealed her quarters, and issued a single directive. Depart the academy within 6 hours, or be detained as a security risk. No trial, no appeal, just silence wrapped in protocol. She did not argue. She packed nothing but a small satchel of dried moon fruit, a coil of starvine cord, and the twin blades she had taken from the ring, now hers by unspoken right. Kale followed without sound, his claws clicking softly against the deck as they moved through the empty corridors. Most cadets avoided her now, pressing themselves against walls when she passed. A few watched from doorways, eyes wide with something between awe and fear. At the academy's outer airlock, a transport shuttle waited. It was old, patched with mismatched plating and smelled of oil and burnt wiring. The pilot, a grizzled human named Rick who flew supply runs to the fringe, nodded once as she boarded. He said nothing. He had seen enough exiles to know words were useless. The shuttle dropped from orbit like a stone, then caught itself in the upper atmosphere with a groan of overworked thrusters. Below, the surface of Terra Nova stretched in blues and greens, beautiful and indifferent. Lila did not look back. They flew for 3 days, jumping from one dead station to another, always staying off the main trade lanes. Rick dropped her at the edge of the Varus Belt, a graveyard of shattered moons and forgotten outposts. "This is as far as I go," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. "Past here, even the scavengers don't go." Lila stepped onto the rusted platform of derelict station M7. The air was thin but breathable, filtered through ancient vents that wheezed like dying beasts. Kale leapt from the shuttle ramp and landed beside her, wings flared for balance. The moment the shuttle lifted off, the silence returned, thick, heavy, and complete. For weeks they lived in the bones of the station. Lila mapped its corridors, repaired its failing systems with scraps and instinct, and turned a storage bay into a forge. She melted down old drone frames and hull fragments, shaping them into new blade cores. Kale hunted in the void, chasing down stray satellites and pulling power cells from their guts. At night, they sat together in the observation dome watching the stars drift. But Lila was not idle. She knew the exile was not the end. It was a test. And the real enemy was not the academy. It was what lay beyond the known systems. Rumors had reached even the academy's sealed halls. Whispers of entire colonies going dark, of signals that cut off mid-transmission, of ships returning with no crew, only strange growths crawling over the consoles. The Alliance dismissed it as piracy or system failure, but Lila knew better. She had seen the signs in her blood dreams. the same dreams that had guided her people through the Great Silence centuries ago. The hive mind of X-Wire was waking. Wire was not a species. It was a will. A single consciousness that spread through spores, nanites, and stolen memories. It consumed worlds not for resources, but for patterns, for the shape of thought, the rhythm of life. Once infected, a being lost itself. It became a node, a voice in the chorus. And the chorus always sang the same song: join, obey, become. The Alliance's fleets were built for war between species, not against an enemy that turned its victims into weapons. Their tactics relied on predictable behavior, on honor, on lines of engagement. Xavier had no lines, no honor, only hunger. Lila knew the Alliance would fail, and when it did, billions would fall. So she trained. In the station's central chamber, she practiced with her blades until her arms burned and her breath came in gasps. She learned to shift the resonance of each blade mid-swing, creating overlapping fields that could slice through reinforced plating. She synced her movements to Kale's breath so that when he exhaled a plume of plasma, she could cut through the heat without flinching. Kale, for his part, grew stronger. His scales darkened to true void black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. He learned to fold space in small bursts, vanishing from one side of the chamber and reappearing on the other in less than a heartbeat. It cost him energy, left him trembling afterward, but he pushed through. He knew what was coming. One night, as Lila meditated in the forge chamber, a signal crackled through the station's old comm array. It was faint, broken by static, but unmistakable. A distress call from Kenthar Prime, the homeworld of Commander Drelk's species. Swarm, walls moving, children screaming. No fleet response. Gods, they're inside the transmission cut off. Lila opened her eyes. Kale stood at the doorway, ears flat, tail coiled tight. They both knew. The hive had struck. Within hours, news flooded the fringe nets. Kenthar Prime had fallen. Not invaded. Not besieged. Consumed. In less than 8 hours, a civilization of 12 billion had been rewritten. The Alliance scrambled, sending 3 battle groups to assess. All 3 vanished before reaching orbit. Panic spread. Colonies fortified. Trade routes collapsed. The High Council finally admitted the threat, but still clung to doctrine. They ordered mass evacuations, not counterattacks. They believed retreat was the only answer. Lila watched the reports from her cracked screen, her face unreadable. Then she stood, walked to the forge, and activated her blades. The silver light filled the room. "We're not waiting," she said. Kale rumbled in agreement. They left the station the next morning, not in a shuttle, but on Kale's back. He had grown large enough to carry her now, his wings spanning 30 meters when fully extended. With a single beat, he tore through the station's outer hull and launched into the void. Lila held tight, her blades strapped across her back, her eyes fixed on the distant glow of the inner systems. Their first stop was a hidden cache on the moon of Neosthal, left behind by her ancestors. There she found what she needed: star metal, forged in the heart of dead suns, capable of holding resonance far beyond standard alloys. She reforged her blades in a single night, singing the old songs as the metal cooled. When she lifted them again, they hummed with a sound like falling stars. Then came the real work. Lila did not attack the hive head-on. She could not. Instead, she became a ghost. She struck at its edges, cutting supply lines it didn't know it had, destroying relay nodes disguised as asteroids, freeing infected outposts before the transformation completed. She moved faster than the Alliance could track, leaving no signature, no pattern. Kale cloaked them in null space, bending light and sensor waves around their forms. They appeared only long enough to strike, then vanished again. The hive noticed. It sent hunters, twisted things made of bone and machine with too many eyes and no mouths. They tracked by scent, by heat, by thought. Lila killed them all. Each victory brought new knowledge. She learned how the hive communicated, through quantum echoes in dark matter. She learned its weak points, nodes where the consciousness thinned like knots in a net, and she learned its fear, because the hive was afraid of her, not because she was strong, but because she was unpredictable. It could not model her choices, could not anticipate her moves. Her elven mind operated on patterns older than logic, on intuition shaped by starlight and silence. To the hive, she was noise in the signal, chaos in the code, and chaos could not be controlled. Meanwhile, the Alliance watched. At first, they called her a rogue element. Then, as hive outposts collapsed one by one, They began to whisper her name like a prayer. High Command sent envoys to the fringe offering reinstatement, rank, even a fleet under her command. Lila ignored them. She knew what they wanted, not her skill, her obedience. They would cage her in strategy rooms, force her into formations, bind her to their doctrine, and in doing so they would make her predictable. And predictability was death against the hive. So she stayed free, stayed sharp, stayed silent. But the hive was learning too. It began to adapt. It started mimicking her tactics, ambushes from null space, dual energy strikes, even the use of resonance blades. And then came the worst sign of all. It began to speak with her voice. On a ruined station near the Orion Vale, Lila found a recording. A hologram flickered to life, showing a figure with silver hair and green eyes holding twin blades. It spoke in her tone, her cadence. "Join us," it said. "You cannot win alone. Become part of the whole." Kale snarled and shattered the projector with a blast of plasma. Lila did not flinch, but her hands tightened on her blades. The hive was not just copying her moves, it was trying to become her. And that meant it knew who she was, which meant it was coming for her. She looked at Kale. He met her gaze, eyes burning with amber fire. They both understood. The fringe was no longer safe. The game had changed. It was time to stop hiding. Somewhere in the core systems, the hive was building its nexus, the heart of its consciousness. If she could reach it, if she could cut it at the root, the rest would collapse. It was a suicide mission. The Alliance had tried and failed. Entire fleets had been erased. But Lila was not a fleet. She was a whisper with two swords, and whispers could slip through cracks that armies could not. She climbed onto Kale's back. He spread his wings, the void rippling around them as he prepared to fold space. Ahead lay war, not the kind taught in academies, not the kind fought with ranks and rules. This was the old war, the silent war, the kind her people had fought before stars had names, and she was ready. On the shattered moon of Varus 9, time moved differently. The surface was cracked open like an old wound. Its core long cooled, its atmosphere stripped away by ancient wars. What remained was silence, dust, and the bones of dead machines half buried in gray sand. It was here that Lila chose to disappear. The Alliance still hunted her, not with ships or soldiers, but with data. They tracked energy spikes, anomalous heat signatures, any ripple in the fringe that might point to her location. But Varus 9 gave off no signals. No power, no life, just rock and ruin. Perfect for ghosts. Lila and Kale made their home in a collapsed command bunker, buried deep beneath a crater wall. The entrance was hidden beneath a sheet of fused glass from an old orbital strike. Inside, the air was stale but stable. Lila sealed the cracks with resin from Kale's breath, then lined the walls with salvaged shielding plates to block external scans. It was not comfortable, but it was safe here. They trained not for show, not for doctrine, but for survival. Lila's new blades, forged from star metal and tuned to her pulse, were unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. They did not just cut. They unraveled. When activated, their edges vibrated at frequencies that disrupted molecular bonds. Armor melted. Energy shields flickered and died. Even the hive's bioplating could not withstand a clean strike. But wielding them came at a cost. Each swing drained her, not just her muscles, but her spirit. The resonance flowed both ways. What she gave to the blades, they took from her. Some days, after hours of practice, she collapsed where she stood, trembling, her silver hair damp with sweat. Kale would curl around her then, his warmth seeping into her bones, his low hum steadying her breath. He trained too, no longer just a companion. Kale pushed his limits daily. He practiced folding space in tighter bursts, learning to vanish and reappear within meters instead of kilometers. He refined his plasma breath into a focused lance, capable of piercing capital ship hulls. And he learned to cloak not just himself but Lila as well, wrapping them both in a bubble of null space that bent light, sound, and sensor waves. They moved as one. When Lila leapt, Kale was already beneath her. When she struck, he was already covering her retreat. No words were needed. Their bond ran deeper than language. While they trained, the war raged beyond the fringe. The hive struck again. This time it was the Varelian homeworld, a peaceful system, known for its libraries and light sculptures. The Alliance sent a warning fleet too late. By the time they arrived, the planet's surface pulsed with hive flesh, its cities transformed into organic towers that hummed with stolen thoughts. The fleet opened fire. The hive answered by launching infected Varelians into orbit. living bombs that latched onto hulls and ate through metal with teeth made of memory. The Alliance retreated, humiliated. Back on Varus 9, Lila watched the reports on a cracked datapad powered by Kale's stored energy. Her face showed no emotion, but her fingers tightened around the device until it cracked further. She knew the Alliance's tactics were failing. They fought in lines, in waves, in predictable patterns. The Hive learned from every engagement, adapting faster than any war council could respond. They needed chaos, and she was chaos. But she would not act yet, not until she was ready. Weeks turned to months. Layla's body grew leaner, harder. Her movements became fluid, effortless. She could now dual-wield for over an hour without collapse. She practiced blindfolded, relying only on sound and instinct. She fought Kale in mock battles, dodging his plasma bursts, slicing through his illusions. Sometimes she won. Sometimes he did. Each loss taught her more than any victory. One night, as they rested beneath the bunker's low ceiling, a faint signal pierced the static. It was encrypted, bouncing through dead satellites to avoid detection. Lila decrypted it with a sequence only her people knew. The message was short. Urgent. From a hidden elven archive on the edge of known space. The Hive has begun weaving elven memory threads into its core. It seeks the old songs. If it learns them, it will not just consume worlds, it will rewrite reality. Lila went still. The old songs were not just melodies. They were blueprints of creation, passed down through blood and starlight. Her ancestors had used them to shape moons, to calm solar flares, to weave time itself. If the Hive gained that power, she did not finish the thought. She did not need to. The next morning, she activated her blades and walked to the center of the bunker. Kale followed, eyes sharp, wings half spread. "We're leaving," she said. Not as fugitives, not as ghosts, but as hunters. Their first target was a Hive relay hidden in the asteroid belt of Grix 5. Intelligence, gathered from intercepted signals and dead scout drones, placed it inside a hollowed-out rock, pulsing with stolen tech. The Alliance had tried to bomb it twice. Both times, the Hive rebuilt it within hours. Lila did not bomb it. She walked in. Kale cloaked them as they approached, slipping past patrols of infected drones that floated like dead fish in the void. Inside the asteroid, the air was thick with spores and the low hum of the hive mind. Walls pulsed with veins of biolight. The floor shifted underfoot, alive and hungry. Lila moved like smoke. Her blades left no sound, only falling bodies. She cut through control nodes, severed neural clusters, and planted resonance charges at key structural points. Kale hovered above, melting support beams with precise bursts of plasma. When they reached the core, a pulsing orb of stolen memories, Lila placed her hand on it. For a moment she saw flashes, Canther children laughing, Varelian poets singing, human lovers holding hands under twin suns, all trapped, all screaming. She closed her eyes, and the asteroid collapsed from within. By the time the Alliance detected the explosion, Lila and Kale were already gone. They hit 3 more relays in as many weeks. Each strike was cleaner, faster, deadlier. The Hive began to react. It sent swarms to guard its nodes. It deployed mimic entities, creatures shaped like known warriors speaking in stolen voices. One even wore Lila's face. She killed it without hesitation. The Alliance noticed. They could not ignore the pattern. Hive activity dropped by 40% in sectors she touched. Colonies that had been marked for evacuation held firm. Hope, fragile but real, began to spread. High Command convened in secret. Debates raged. Some called her a terrorist. Others called her the only chance they had. Finally, they sent a message, not through official channels but through an old friend of Lila's, a human medic named Claire, who had once treated her after a training accident. The message was simple: return lead, we will follow. Lila read it 3 times. Then she looked at Kale. They will try to control us, she said. Kale snorted, smoke curling from his nostrils. But if we refuse, she continued, billions die. She did not want command. She did not want ranks or titles or strategy rooms, but she knew the truth. Alone, she could delay the Hive. With the Alliance's resources, she could end it, so she sent her reply. No ranks, no rules, just results. The Alliance agreed. Within days, a stealth frigate stripped of all insignia arrived at Varus 9. Its captain, a quiet woman named Maya with cybernetic eyes, stood at the ramp and bowed. We are yours to command, she said. Lila did not smile. She simply walked aboard, Kale at her side. The war had changed. Now it had a blade with two edges. Lila's campaign began not with a fleet but with silence. She refused a command bridge, a uniform, even a title. She asked only for a ship with stealth capabilities, a crew who followed without question and full access to Alliance intelligence. The High Council, desperate and humbled, gave her everything. Aboard the frigate Duskrunner, Lila mapped the Hive's network, not by strength, but by rhythm. She studied its pulses, its pauses, the way it shifted after each loss. While war councils planned massive offensives, she saw patterns others missed. A relay rebuilt too quickly, a signal echoing in a dead zone, a mimic deployed before an attack even began. The Hive was learning, yes, but it was also revealing itself. Her first strike under Alliance support targeted a biofactory orbiting the gas giant Orin 4. Intelligence showed it was producing new hunter forms, faster and more adaptive. Standard doctrine called for orbital bombardment. Lila chose infiltration. She and Kale dropped from the Duskrunner in a cloaked pod, landing on the factory's outer shell like shadows. Inside, the air reeked of ammonia and wet metal. Walls pulsed with organic circuitry. Infected workers moved in unison, their eyes empty, their hands stitching flesh to steel. Lila moved through them like wind. Her blades left no sound, only falling forms. Kale melted through bulkheads with plasma bursts, clearing paths without alerting the core. They reached the heart of the factory, a vat of swirling nanites feeding into a dozen half-formed mimics. Lila planted resonance charges along the vat's support struts, synced to her heartbeat. Then she triggered them. The explosion tore the factory apart from within. By the time Alliance sensors registered the blast, Lila and Kale were already back aboard the Duskrunner, sipping bitter root tea in the cargo bay. Strike after strike followed. A Hivecom's hub near the Helios Rim, a spore launcher hidden in a derelict carrier, a memory harvesting station built inside a dead star's corona. Each time Lila struck fast, vanished faster. The Alliance provided cover, feints, decoys, but never direct involvement. She insisted on it. Too many ships meant noise. Noise meant predictability, and predictability meant death. Morale across the Alliance began to shift. Colonies that had prepared for evacuation now fortified with hope. Soldiers spoke her name not with fear but with reverence. The Silver Ghost, they called her. Some said she wasn't real, that she was a myth created to frighten the Hive. Others swore they'd seen her, blades flashing like starlight in the dark. But the Hive was not idle. It had watched. It had learned. And now it answered. On the edge of the Neosthal system, Leela received a distress signal from a research outpost. The message was clean, clear, and signed by a known Alliance scientist. She hesitated. It felt too neat. But the outpost held data on Hive spore resistance, information that could save millions. She went anyway. Caution was not the same as fear. The outpost floated in silent orbit, lights dim, hull intact. No signs of struggle. Kale circled above, cloaked, scanning for traps. Lila entered alone, blades ready. Inside, everything was in place. Consoles active, logs updated. Even the coffee cups were warm. Too warm. Then the lights died. In the darkness, something moved. Not with the shuffle of the infected, but with the grace of a predator. A figure stepped into the emergency glow. Tall, silver-haired, green-eyed. Wearing a training suit just like Lila's, it held twin blades. You should have stayed in the fringe, it said. Its voice was hers. Every inflection. Every pause. Lila did not flinch. You copied my arms, she said. But not my soul. The Echo lunged. The fight was unlike any Lila had faced. The Echo moved exactly as she did. Same footwork, same feints, same rhythm. It even synced its blades to a false heartbeat, mimicking her resonance. Their blades clashed in bursts of silver light, each strike echoing like thunder in the sealed corridor. Kale dove from orbit, plasma ready, but the Echo had anticipated him. Hive tendrils shot from the walls, wrapping around his wings, injecting neural disruptors. He roared, thrashing, but the poison slowed him. He crashed into the outpost's observation deck, glass shattering around him. Lila fought on, but doubt crept in. Every move she made, the Echo countered. It knew her patterns, her instincts, even her breath. Then it spoke again, softer this time. Remember your sister, how she begged before the spores took her, how you left her behind. Lila froze. She had never told anyone about her sister. Never. The Echo pressed the advantage. A blade slashed across Lila's ribs. She stumbled back, blood soaking her suit. The Echo raised both blades for the final strike. But Lila smiled. "You got the memory wrong," she whispered. "I didn't leave her. I burned her myself. So the Hive wouldn't have her." The Echo hesitated, just for a heartbeat. That was all Lila needed. She dropped her left blade. The Echo flinched, expecting a trick. But Lila didn't grab a weapon. She slammed her palm into the outpost's emergency purge panel. The entire section depressurized in seconds. Air, debris, and the Echo were sucked into the void. Lila held on, bleeding, gasping. Kale, weakened but alive, folded space just enough to pull her aboard the Dusk Runner before the outpost collapsed. Back on the ship, medics worked on her wounds. Kale lay in the cargo bay, scales dull, breath shallow. The neural disruptor had damaged his spatial folds. He would heal, but not quickly. For the first time, Lila sat in silence and doubted. The Hive had not just copied her body, it had dug into her past. Her pain, her secrets. And if it knew those, what else did it know worse? It had a champion now, one that could match her in skill, mimic her in form and weaponize her memories. The Echo was not just a weapon, it was a message. You are not unique. You are not safe. You are ours to understand. Lila stared at the stars through the viewport. The Alliance celebrated the outpost's destruction as another victory. They did not know how close she had come to dying, how close Kale had come. She knew the final battle was coming, and this time the Hive would not send drones or relays. It would send her, and she would have to kill herself to win. The core nexus hung in the void like a wound in space. It was not a planet, not a station, but a living sphere of fused bone, metal, and stolen memory, pulsing with the heartbeat of the Hive mind. From it, tendrils of dark energy stretched into nearby systems, rewriting reality one mind at a time. The Alliance had tried to destroy it 3 times. Each attempt ended in silence, entire fleets vanishing without a trace. Now Lila stood before it alone. Kale waited in high orbit, wings folded tight, body humming with the last of his strength. He could not fight, not yet. The neural disruptor still lingered in his blood, dulling his folds, slowing his fire. But he was ready. If Lila failed, he would collapse the nearby star into a supernova, burning the Nexus and himself with it. It was their final plan. Their last silence. Lila wore no armor. Only her dark suit, her twin blades, and the cord of moonvine around her wrist. She did not board a shuttle. She stepped from the Dusk Runner's airlock and walked across the void, her steps guided by will alone. The Nexus did not stop her. It welcomed her. Inside, the air was thick with whispers. Voices of the consumed, Kenthar children, Varelian poets, human lovers, all singing the same song. Join, obey, become. Walls shifted like breathing flesh. Floors rippled underfoot. Light came not from bulbs, but from veins of glowing memory. And at the center, waiting, was the Echo. It looked exactly like her. Same silver hair, same green eyes, same blades. But its movements were sharper, colder. It had no doubt, no fear. Only purpose. You came back, the Echo said. Its voice was smooth, certain. You always do. Lila did not answer. She drew her blades. The silver hum filled the chamber. The fight began without warning. They moved as one mind split in 2. Each strike mirrored, each dodge anticipated. The Echo used Lila's own rhythm against her, sinking its blades to mimic her resonance. Sparks flew. Walls cracked. The Hive watched through 1,000 eyes, learning, recording, waiting. But Lila had changed. In the days since Neos Thal, she had not trained her body. She had trained her silence. She stopped thinking in patterns, stopped relying on instinct. Instead, she emptied herself, became still, became nothing. And from that nothing, she moved. The Echo faltered. A feint that should have worked failed. A counter that should have landed missed. Lila's movements were no longer predictable, not even to a copy of herself. She fought like starlight, present but impossible to hold. You're afraid? Lila said, parrying a strike that would have severed her arm. You think knowing my past makes you stronger. But memory is a cage, and I burned mine long ago, the Echo snarled. It dropped its mimicry, its form twisted, bones elongating, skin splitting to reveal hive flesh beneath. It grew taller, faster, its blades now edged with spores that hissed in the air. Lila smiled. Now you're just another monster. She attacked, not with strength, but with truth. She let the Echo see her pain, her sister's face, her exile, her loneliness. And then she cut through it. Every strike carried a memory, but not as weakness, as fuel, as fire. The echo staggered. For the first time, it felt something it could not understand. Not data, not pattern, but choice. In that moment, Lila dropped her left blade. The echo laughed. Still the same trick, but Lila did not reach for a weapon. She slammed her palm onto the Nexus floor, a surface woven from elven memory threads. She closed her eyes and sang not a war cry, not a spell, but the oldest song of her people, the one that shaped stars and calmed time. The hive had stolen the notes, but not the soul, and soul could not be copied. The Nexus shuddered. The echo screamed as the stolen memories inside it unraveled. Its form flickered. Between Lila, between monster, between nothing. It tried to speak her name, but the sound broke apart. Lila picked up her fallen blade, not to strike, but to offer. You wanted to be me, she said. So be free. She plunged both blades into the echo's chest, not to kill, but to sink. She channeled her own resonance into the hive's core, not as destruction, but as dissonance, a single note out of harmony. A crack in the song. The hive mind screamed across 1,000 worlds. The Nexus collapsed inward, not with fire, but with silence. The tendrils retracted. The whispers stopped. The stolen voices faded, finally at peace. Lila stood in the ruins, blades dim, breath ragged. The echo lay at her feet, its form dissolving into ash. In its final moment, it looked at her. Not with hatred, but with something like gratitude. Above, Kale folded space and appeared beside her. His scales still dull, but his eyes bright. He nudged her gently with his snout. She climbed onto his back without a word. The Alliance arrived hours later. Fleets emerged from warp, weapons ready, but found only silence and drifting debris. No hive, no Nexus, no Lila. They searched for weeks, found nothing. Back on Terra Nova, the High Council declared victory. Statues were planned. Songs were written. But in quiet corners, cadets still whispered. They said the Silver Ghost had not died, that she and her dragon flew beyond the edge of known space where new threats stirred in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, she was already watching. Somewhere in the void, two shadows moved between stars. No ranks, no rules, just results. And the galaxy for now was safe.